out of the most traumatic and challenging circumstances in my life. In September 2010, I found myself sitting on a cushion in a retreat centre looking out at the Atlantic Ocean in West Cork. Terrified, my life was unravelling and I didn't know who I was. The previous week, I had walked out of my position as Managing Director of an Irish multinational that I had formed and created. Burnt out, I had crashed, and I didn't know who I was. And I was now forced, sitting on a cushion, to finally really look at myself and how I was showing up and how I was living in the world. And stripping my identity and my status and my title, I now was terrified of what I would find, because I didn't know who I was. I was forced to reflect and face my reality and my truth. My truth that I had been running. I'd been living a life running from myself and running from parts of me that were too painful to touch. Running from a particular moment 7 years previous when my father had taken his life. And rather than face the pain, the trauma, and the utter sense of abandonment, I decided instead to throw myself into my work and become really busy and really successful. But it was just on paper. And I was sitting on that cushion. I realised there was huge parts of myself that I had abandoned in my busyness. The driver, the successful businesswoman, the entrepreneur was very strong. But there was a huge other aspect of myself that I had completely and utterly abandoned in my deep urge and to be a success. Then the mother, the nurturer, the more gentle, more creative part of myself had been abandoned. And I realised sitting on that cushion how I was alive, how I was completely out of balance, my life was out of balance. And it was in that moment that I realised and had to face the truth that I had a lot more similarities with my father that I would hate it to admit. My father had lived a busy life, a hectic life. His addiction had been alcohol, and I now realised my addiction had been busyness. And rather than allow myself to be with me, I distracted myself from my busyness. And I realised I was repeating a family pattern. I was incapable of being present with myself or being present with my younger daughter because I had been living a life at an adrenaline pace and a craziness. And it was in that moment that I was able to find a deep forgiveness for my father. Because I realised he had no awareness of how he was unconsciously living, like I had no awareness of how I had been unconsciously living my life. And how I had become completely disconnected with myself and my heart. And I had really disconnected what truly mattered. I had to I began a journey of finding a whole new way of living and being, where I had to develop my whole emotional and spiritual side of myself, because it had been completely abandoned and was lacking. I needed to learn a way of sitting with myself and being present, and finding a space to love myself and to not look for validation for things outside of myself. Earlier this year, as part of that journey, I, with a group of others, had a vision and a dream to put the well-being of the nation at the forefront of our society. We carried out a project for 6 months and we engaged with over 400 people in the conversation. And what I saw was that I was not alone. I saw many others disempowered by the busyness and the craziness of our hectic schedules. But I also saw a real appetite and hope to find a new way of living and being. And in sharing honestly and sharing from our hearts, we found and witnessed a huge sense of collaboration, community and connection. I've come to the interesting part, though, was part of that journey. I saw my old tendency come alive, and that busyness and that crazy part of me, that driver, appeared again. And I've realised, my resolution for 2015 is I've realised that it's going to be my journey, a lifelong challenge that I will have, in to strike that balance and to bring my whole self to my relationships and to my work, and to strike that balance between head and heart, allowing myself to be truer to myself and to others. And it's important that I, as part of my resolution, strike that balance within myself, not only for myself and my children. And if we want to affect change in our society and our world, we have to start with ourselves. And I'd like to finish now on a piece by Portia Nelson. It's autobiography in 5 chapters. Chapter 1. I walked down the street. There was a deep hole in the sidewalk. I've fallen. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walked down the same street. There was a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I've fallen again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walked down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street.